So the question is, how do I own a piece of the businesses that I work with instead of just managing them? And this is a question that didn't actually occur to me until much later in my career, probably 7 years deep into my career. And it's a powerful question. It's a question that, if you find the answer, completely changes your wealth trajectory. So for me, I went into business thinking, hey, I just need this many clients. I'll do their ads and I'll make enough money to go travel all around the world, buy the cars I want, get the house and the condos I want, and all that. And I'll be straight. And I find that a lot of service providers think this way. My route was ads, maybe your route something different, but we think that through business ownership of providing this service, we will become rich. And we're half right. We're almost right. But there's a piece that's missing. Okay. So let's focus on where we are right, and then I'll get into the piece that's missing that I figured out. And the part that we have right is that there's one common thread between how all forms of wealth are built. If you name the industry, how did this person get rich? How did this person get rich? Why is this person a billionaire, a decamillionaire, whatever, a multimillionaire? How's this person making six figures? Like any amount of riches that you aspire to all boil down to one thing, one way or another: ownership. That's the headline: ownership. And for those of us who get into business for ourselves, we kind of know that. We kind of are picking that up. It's like, all of the rich people I talk to own shit. Like they own a business or they own real estate, which, by the way, if you own real estate, with the intent to rent it out to a tenant, whether that's short-term rental, long-term rental, newsflash, you're not just a real estate investor, but you're a business owner. That in and of itself is a business. And so when you really look at it, the only way to build wealth globally is through business ownership, whether it's very direct and you start a business, things like I'm trying to do and like what you're trying to do, or if you're buying shares of a business, like investing in the stock market, right? All of that boils down to business ownership. Okay. There's only one thing that I'm aware of that you can own that is not tied to business ownership, still ownership, and that's Bitcoin. And you still have to, that's property that you have to own, basically, digital property. But this video is not about Bitcoin. This video is about how you can expand on that ownership and how you can complete the thought. So the beginning of the thought is, hey, I need to own a business so I can make a lot of money. The rest of the thought is you need to own multiple businesses. And I'm not talking about distracting yourself. I'm not saying, hey, go start a bunch of different businesses. It's a very quick way to fail, very unfocused, very scatterbrained, a lot of different processes that you have to build out if you're starting these businesses. If you're buying businesses, which is something that's becoming more popular in the mainstream of notifying people, hey, you could buy a business. Like if you're buying multiple businesses, if you don't have operators in those businesses, then you have to manage all those different processes. And even if you do, you have to manage all those operators. So that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about is when you get into B2B service work, you have your mind fixed on owning your company, right? But I won't make this complicated. If instead of just taking a transactional fee, like a retainer or whatever, for your services in exchange for your services, if you take equity in that business that you're servicing, which means you own a piece of that business, which means you're entitled to a piece of the profits, then you can exponentially increase how much you earn. So here's what that looks like. And it's not complicated either. If you can tie your work and your expertise to a significant improvement to the business, something that people can measure, something that people can say, hey, this was a great net positive addition, right? I do it through funnels and ads. You may be able to do it through branding. You may be able to do it through growth. You may be able to do it through email list management. You may be able to do it through sales. You may be able to do it whatever ways make you a special business professional. But what you're doing is you're taking all that expertise that you have and you're saying, hey, I know what type of impact this can have on the business. And instead of just you paying me a fee, how about I get some skin in the game? And when you start to do that across your client base, a couple of things happen. For one, you now have ownership stake in more than just one business. Before, the only ownership stake you have in is your business, and maybe you take some of the profits to buy into the stock market, right? But if you start to own your clients, right? Some of them you're going to own 100%. Some of them you're going to own 5%. But if you start to own some of your clients, then what happens is you own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You start to own, build equity in more and more businesses. And that is a beautiful thing, not just financially, because yes, you will make more money that way as long as however you invest into the company successfully pans out and you can uphold that. But it also gives you flexibility. So you are no longer bound by the limitations of your core business that is based around your expertise, right? You now have additional resources to improve the businesses that you're working on. I'll give you a real life example. Before, when I was running a marketing agency, I would charge a retainer. So that base retainer was $2,500 a month. The last time that I offered this, it was $2,500 a month. It scaled up to $7,500 a month based on performance. But that effectively gave me my budget for hiring. So mind you, if you follow, and I use the profit first method to manage my money. So for me, that looks like I take anywhere from 40 to 50% as owner's pay, and I use another 30 to 40% for operating expenses. The rest is for taxes and savings, right? Roughly, it changes, but that's roughly how it goes. So that means that from a $2,500 retainer, I pay myself $1,000 to $1,250 a month. And then I have another $750 or so for operating expenses. Who can you really hire off of one client with $750? Low-level talent like here in the United States, or mid-level talent maybe internationally. And so you create this quality issue. And the quality issue doesn't just stop there, because you're thinking, okay, well then all you have to do is get multiple clients. That's how I was thinking for a long time. Trust me, it's a mistake. Because then you math it out and say, okay, to have the team quality that I need, like high quality A players, one on media buying, one on this, one on that, or say you need 3 A players, and this is less than A players actually cost, but for the sake of simple numbers, let's say each A player gets paid $5,000 a month each. You need 15 grand per month available to expend to your team. And then you probably need another couple or few $1,000s a month to do your own advertising and marketing to keep the pipeline full. So let's say $15,000 for team, $5,000 for marketing. Just keep the numbers even. That should even things out considering we underpaid the A players here. So $20,000 a month, and that's going to be 30 to 40% of the total revenue you bring in. So that puts you at like 60 grand a month that you need to be making to have the people that you need to support a high quality service so that you can retain clients. Now, what's $60,000 divided by $2,500, right? I'm asking this because this is how we figure out how many clients we need to maintain to meet this status quo. That's, what is that? 24 clients at that rate that you need to maintain at any given time. And you have to get to that 24 clients before you can afford your full A team, which means you're doing a lot of work and your entry level to mid-level team is doing a lot of work. It doesn't pan out well. Like, telling you from experience, not just personal experience, but I used to work in a white label ad agency, and I got to establish relationships with a lot of agency owners and see behind the scenes of a lot of agency owners, and not just advertising agencies, creative agencies, website development agencies, all sorts of service providers. And this is the fundamental struggle, is having enough money for growth, having enough money for the best team that you can get, and having enough money to pay yourself so that you're rich. And it's very difficult. And 9 times out of 10, people are sacrificing on those things just to make the other things work. So you're either sacrificing paying yourself so that you can pay out a large amount to your team and keep them satisfied and decently paid, or you're sacrificing on teams so that you could pay yourself. And any way you put it, this creates fundamental problems in the business. However, if you switch to owning the businesses that you work with, even if it's just a piece, what happens is the whole frame around the relationship changes. You're no longer just a contractor. You're a part of the business. You're effectively on the board. And so that means you have influence over how the business's money gets spent. So this is where that flexibility comes in. Because if you, as the service provider, don't have the revenue to be able to bring in the people or the software or whatever resources you need to take that business to the next level, you can use your influence in that business to redirect capital into the things that you need. So I really needed like a solid email list manager when I was just doing my retainers. I really needed a solid media buyer when I was doing my retainers, because if not, then I was writing all the emails, setting up all the flows, doing all the segmentation, coming up with all the ideas for the new ads, writing all of the copy for the funnel if it was that type of business, for the ads. I was doing all the coaching on like the sales side. So business owner, hey, now that we generated the leads, this is how you close your deals. I was doing everything. And I'm like, okay, I need to let some of these things go. But how am I supposed to afford that? How am I supposed to afford great quality talent with just the budget I have? Even if I'm making 10, 20 grand a month, like that's not giving me a lot of room to work with. And I'll still have to be heavily involved because I won't be able to bring on A players, right? Fast forward, now that I switched to having ownership stake and publishing rights and things like that, I can now be in that business and say, hey, we're profiting this much per month. We can afford this service or these people that we need and hire from within the business instead of relying on company A as the contractor for all of this stuff. When I say you get more flexibility, like you get more resources to deploy.
Cody from the future here. So something that we just mentioned in this video was how you get more flexibility, like how the business that you work with can absorb the expense required for the talent that it needs to grow. But another great benefit, changing this approach, changing this way that you do business, is in the amount of earning potential you have per client that you service. So on an earlier example, we talked about, hey, if we needed to hire these people and we needed to make 60 grand a month and each of them were paying us 2,500 a month flat, we need 24 clients paying us at 2,500 a month. So we need all these clients just to hit our 60 grand a month goal. But if we take this same model, and I'll use my actual numbers, okay? So as of right now, on average, out of like everybody that I've published, right, they will make, I believe it's somewhere around $300,000 to $500,000 per year in profit in the first year. So I'll go with the lower estimate on that because I always like being conservative in my estimates for earnings potential. So let's say they make 300 grand a year in profit. I think it's closer to 500, but still, my cut is 50%. Then that's 150 grand a year in profit per client, which boils down to 12,500 per month. So for our 60 grand a month goal, if we do 60 grand, do the math here, divided by 1,200, then we need 4.8, or let's call it 5 clients to hit our goal as opposed to 24 clients. So think about the power of that. Like, you're getting paid what you want to get paid while having less clients to do that. And the beauty of that is like, you don't have to worry about churn as much. Like, instead of working these large numbers, you got to make a lot of sales every month. You churning out a ton of people every month. Like, that's a big concern. That's a big flaw. That's something that will affect you negatively. And also think about the bandwidth of you as the leader of the team and also everybody who you bring onto your team when you can afford to hire people. Like, y'all only have to work on 5 clients in the portfolio as opposed to 24 to hit the same goals, right? And that just persists as you continue to grow the company. But I just wanted to include that to give that side-by-side perspective. Go on, continue this video.
So how do you actually start doing this? It's not super complicated. It's extremely valuable and it's relatively simple. But the change that you have to make is from contractor to investor, okay? It's primarily a frame change and a contract change, right? So your contracts can just be, oh, we'll do this work for this amount of money every month. It's like your contracts are like, what are the ramifications of your involvement in the business? Like, what are you handling? And then what is your pay structure? And whatever that pay structure is has to include some form of equity. And when I started out doing this, I didn't even get real equity. I got shadow equity, which is really just profit sharing. And even that, super valuable, super valuable. Made a lot more money with a lot more focus because I had a lot less clients to focus on. And I have continuous upside. So we can hire people within the businesses and I can step back and focus on bringing in the next partner while the people that I've brought into the existing businesses are running it at the level that it needs to be at. And then whenever I have something that I can bring to the table to increase the value of those businesses more, I step back in, work those things in, and again, let it ride. And so I went from earning a fixed retainer to now earning a portion of the upside, which is phenomenally more lucrative. I promise you, I had never felt so secure in my life. And that is the fundamental difference there. So my call out to you is start seeing yourself as an investor, start seeing your work as capital, and start basically partnering for equity. And if you're scared, go straight for equity because that's a nuanced conversation that you have to navigate. Go for profit sharing. Get a piece of the profits, whether that's to completely replace your retainer or to be a little something on top. And that will open so many doors for you, just as it has for me. And my quality of life has increased as a result because now I get to spend a lot more time with my family, which has always been like why I wanted to build wealth in the first place, why I wanted to become a business owner, why I wanted to go down this path wasn't just so I can make a lot of money. If I just wanted to make a lot of money, then I would have just become a psychiatrist. If my profession was to take me somewhere else, that's where it would be. But I wanted to tie that income to an abundance, available free will in my day-to-day life. So I could use that free will to spend intimate time with my family, because average life expectancy of a male in the United States is what, like 80 something years old. I'm a quarter of the way there, and there's a million ways to die in between. And so I want to be able to maximize every moment that I have to build connections with my family, just not able to do that as a freelancer or as a contractor, but you are able to do it as an investor. And if you've ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you know about the quadrants, you have employed, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And your goal is to be a business owner or investor to make a ton of money, right? And ultimately to go from business owner to investor. That's the goal. And I remember hearing something years ago on Graham Stephan's YouTube channel where he talked about his entry into real estate and how it takes the same amount of work to sell multi-million-dollar properties and get a much larger commission as it does to sell regular properties for a few $100,000 and get a much smaller commission. And so he just stepped in and just focused on the higher commission properties. And the same thing applies here. You are allowed to step right into the investor position, okay? Like if you know you have skills that can improve a business, step into an investor position instead of being in the self-employed or business owner position, and you will find yourself in much more lucrative business deals with much more ownership.